Hey now, what is up everybody? My name is Mike Brown, aka ReviewKingMB, and this is part 2 of my top 50 favorite superhero movies of all time. This started out as a response to Collider videos. They're doing their top 50 and some of their lists. I couldn't believe what I saw, which prompted me to do this. But you know what? At this point, I'm having fun. There are going to be people who disagree with my list, people who think my list sucks as well. It happens. Oh well. Let's start with 25. At number 25, Kick-Ass. This is a movie that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough, right? But Kick-Ass was one of those movies that I loved. I enjoyed. I remember when I first saw this in the theater and I was like, holy crap. This is so much fun. This just had the right tone, the right atmosphere. I loved seeing the main character, Dave, and how he wanted to be a superhero. He wanted to be just like one of those. He wanted to be Spider-Man. He wanted to be some of his favorite characters. But in real life, if you go out there to be a superhero, you're going to get your ass kicked. Big Daddy and Hit Girl, Nicolas Cage and Chloe Grace Moretz. Chloe Grace Moretz, this was her coming out party. This was like, wow, look at this chick. And I still think, even though she's older now and she does all these movies, I still think she was at her best at however old she was in this movie. She was so young, but she was a badass. She takes over the role, essentially, as Kick-Ass, just in the sense of she kicks ass and she is killing all these dudes. She's cursing and the novelty of that. 24, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original, of course. I loved this as a kid. This is one of those movies that they got so right. They somehow took a property that was about Ninja Turtles, grown size, adult size Ninja Turtles, who act like teenagers, who love pizza, who go out and do what they do. They fight crime, they fight ninjas, and their main villain is a dude in a metal helmet named Shredder, and they talk to a rat. Like, when you break this property down, it sounds silly, and that explains why every sequel, even the reboots since then, have all been silly and goofy and cartoony and predominantly for kids. But when you watch this first one, just tonally perfect. Never pay full price for late pizza. For 23, X-Men First Class. This movie had a huge task of having to come back from The Last Stand and X-Men Origins Wolverine. It had to regain our trust. And it did that. I love, especially the beginning of this movie. Michael Fassbender as Magneto is great. You see him as a kid and his mother being killed in the concentration camp. He grows up and goes after these Nazis one by one. I would have loved to have watched a movie just about that. We almost got that, but we got it here instead. And it was so good. The bar scene where he's using his powers to use the knife and use the gun on these guys. It's so good. And also to watch his relationship, his friendship with Professor X, how that got started, and the two of them getting closer, that it's that much more tragic when they veer off in their own ways. James McAvoy as Professor Xavier is great. I love seeing him younger and using his powers to get some ladies. And you had Kevin Bacon as the villain. So many good things about the movie. January Jones withstanding. We won't talk about that, but everything else worked. This being a period piece, just everything. Number 22, Man of Steel. Here's a movie that does not get enough respect, does not get enough love, and it's fine. If you don't love this movie, if you don't like this movie, that's cool, but I do. I remember seeing this in the theater for the first time and thinking to myself, first of all, the new version of Krypton looked great. Them skipping over Clark as a child on the farm, being taken by the Kents, and us skipping all of that because we've seen it so many damn times. I watched 10 years of Smallville of them doing that. We moved on and we saw a different take on the origin and his relationship with Lois Lane. I instantly loved how she, from the beginning, knows that he's Superman. From the beginning is seeking him out. General Zod showing up on Earth. This became an alien invasion movie, but with Superman. It was so different. It was so cool. I do have issues, other issues of like Jonathan Kent and some of the parenting things that he decides to do with Clark. I don't care for that. And his death, I don't care for that either. But the battle at the end with Superman and Zod, I loved. I was was overwhelmed in the theater, just like finally we see Superman kick ass. We got so many movies where we didn't get that, and the last Superman movie before this, Superman Returns, he didn't fight anything or punch anything. So sure, maybe it was excessive. Sure, maybe a lot of buildings came down, a lot of people looked like a lot of people died, and that upset some people. Okay, but I was just glad to get the action that we got with Superman finally. Him killing Zod, people don't like that. I was fine with it. 21, I was surprised how low this was on Collider's list. Dark Knight Rises. I enjoyed this movie. And I know some people are going to say, oh, between the 3 Nolan movies, this is the weakest one. Technically, that's true because of even where I placed it. But I still think there's so many good things about the film. You see Christian Bale at the beginning, battered and broken. It's Batman. Bruce Wayne, like, he doesn't even want to be Batman. And when he comes out of retirement, when he wants to test himself against somebody like Bane, and even the scene where they fight for the first time, and Bane beats the holy F out of Batman, breaks his back, breaks the mask off, the cowl. It's shocking and disturbing to see all of that. And people will say, oh, we don't get enough Batman. Just when we get Batman to come back, he gets thrown into the pit and he's broken. Sure, that's true. That's true. And you could almost argue that maybe these 2 side plots or big plots should have been 2 different movies. Okay, but still, let's take it for what it is. This is the best story about Batman that's not his origin. This is the most about Batman. This is the most about him struggling, Bruce Wayne struggling to come out of imminent defeat. I love Bane's connection to the League of Shadows and Ra's al Ghul's brief appearance, Talia al Ghul being there as well. Anne Hathaway as Catwoman she blew me away as Selina Kyle. I thought she was great. She really impressed me with where she was able to go with the character. Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets a lot of screen time, and I like him as John Blake. Maybe you don't love him as Robin or where that goes, but I was okay with it. And Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon, and him having to deal with that secret that he kept about Harvey Dent, and seeing that come out. And the big battle, the big epic finality of the citizens versus the army. They finally gave Batman a nice, fitting end. A good ending, a happy ending. Batman never gets that, at least in the comics. 20, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is very high, apparently, on Collider's list, and that's fine. I enjoyed this movie, obviously. I think 20 is a great spot. I think Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman is great. Seeing that mascara, I mean, I've talked so much about this movie, how gorgeous it looks. Awesome that a woman can sit in the audience and watch this movie and be inspired or be happy to see it, because we know how long we've been seeing men kick ass, so I'm all for women doing it as well. Number 19, The Incredibles. The Incredibles is an animated Pixar movie that I, for years, never saw. I would hear great things about it. It's the Fantastic Four we should have had and all this stuff. And then I finally ended up watching it recently. And I loved it. I couldn't believe how good it was, how funny it was, how much fun it was, how much I loved this family and their dynamic, and the father, just him having to keep them together, because this starts off with a lot of huge, serious stuff going on with heroes being banned and outlawed and them having to live normal lives, but the father doesn't want to do that. He's sneaking off to be a hero. Then they come back together and them fighting the villain, this kid who was obsessed with Mr. Incredible, but he got rejected, felt rejected, went off to become this evil kid, like one of the best villain stories of any superhero movie, and it's an animated kids film. Number 18, Batman Returns. Again, one of these movies, one of these Batman movies that I loved. I watched all the time as a kid. It's something that I still remember being a kid watching this, helping my love for the character, for Batman, for the superhero genre, how much I love that. Michael Keaton is great as Batman. Michelle Pfeiffer is amazing as Selina Kyle. I just talked about Anne Hathaway, but for me, Selina Kyle is Michelle Pfeiffer. Like, that's who I think of. Her look, her attitude, her demeanor. I know she's a secretary at the beginning, not exactly what Selina is in the comics, and her origin story of being dropped out a window and then resurrected by cats. It is very weird and almost dumb, but for some reason, she makes it work. She goes up against Batman. I love their relationship, how Bruce Wayne and Selina are dating. They clearly like each other, but as Batman and Catwoman, they fight all the time. And even the scene in the fireplace where they have scars and they're messing with that, like that's funny as well. Danny DeVito as the Penguin. Everybody remembers his version of the Penguin and just how weird and disfigured and gross and inappropriate he probably was for me as a kid to hear him say all those pervy things. But I like it. I do. Seeing him eat the raw fish and seeing him bite that guy's nose off and all of this stuff that isn't traditionally the Penguin. And I get it. If you're a fan of the comic book version, sure, you'd be pissed. The big, huge yellow duck. It's all dumb, but I love it. Number 17, Chronicle. Chronicle is a film that just blew me away, caught me by surprise. These 3 high school kids, found footage style, by the way, and they're all like how they find their superpowers. Watching the 2 brothers, Dane DeHaan, slip into that darkness. This was Michael B. Jordan's coming out party where we're like, holy crap, this guy's gonna be a star, and he is. And just watching these characters devolve into enemies is sad to watch. It's painful to watch because of how much you like them at first, and it ends up going in a direction where people still talk about this movie. People still are curious about what a sequel could look like. Number 16, Superman the movie. Some people would say, what the hell? This is top 10. And yeah, this movie is great. This movie did lay the groundwork, lay the foundation of what a superhero film should be. How you start off with the origin, how you start off with getting to know this character inside and out, and then watching their growth into becoming that hero that we love. I mean, you see Marlon Brando at the beginning of Krypton and the destruction of that, them sending the baby off into the ship and the baby showing up at the Kents on the farm. You get that brief sequence of him as a high school kid and his father dying, and then him going off to his destiny, finding the Fortress of Solitude, him learning everything he has to learn. We see Christopher Reeve as Superman, and he goes to Metropolis, and it's that portion of Metropolis that becomes like a different movie. He's working the Daily Planet, and he meets Lois, falls instantly in love with her. Their dynamic is interesting because she just doesn't know that he's Superman. Those glasses are a hell of a disguise. The only thing that puts it as the spot that it is for me, because the movie is still great, the movie is still watchable, the movie is still great. It's just Lex Luthor. I think Gene Hackman has moments of being a really good Luthor, but he's never really been my Luthor. I like Luthor with a little bit more to him, a little bit more behind him. And here he just seemed to be a villain who had his goal of wanting to take up this portion of land, and he had these missiles to do it, and it just seemed typical. It just seemed like what you would expect to see from any other villain, where Lex is more deeper than that, or after the fact he became more deeper and more interesting than that. Very small complaints though, very small nitpicks. Superman saving Lois by spinning the world around. It is almost like, wow, he's that powerful that he can do that? Because apparently he should just be able to do that anytime. 15, Spider-Man Homecoming. People will say that this is the greatest Spider-Man movie ever, and I understand why. Tom Holland is great. Michael Keaton as the Vulture, playing a bad guy this time, is great. And seeing a Peter Parker who's actually a teenager and actually in high school, and it feels that way. His relationship with Aunt May, his relationship with Liz, this girl that he likes, or Michelle, another girl that you're wondering where that's going to go, but Zendaya plays that well. And I love just seeing Peter with this upgraded Iron Man given suit that has this technology. Iron Man Tony Stark is used in a perfect way as well. There's really no reason why I don't have it above any other Spider-Man movie, just in the sense that it's very new. It's something that I haven't lived with and grown with enough to put it higher than where it is, but I think it still deserves this spot. Number 14, Logan. Man, I really wanted to put Logan in the top 10. It's so, so good. It takes it into a Western territory. It's very serious. It's very much like this is the Wolverine that you've wanted to see. Hugh Jackman, after so many years of playing this character, he's at the point now where he just wants to die, where he's letting himself die and get sick. Sure, he's taking care of Patrick Stewart, Professor Xavier, who gives a great performance as well, but he just wants to die. It's not till he gets close to X-23 and they have that relationship, this little girl, seeing this little girl with claws, being this badass, being this monster, and then seeing her human side. It works. It works so well. The only reason why it's not top 10 for me, I guess, is because, yeah, it is depressing. Sure, there is an aspect of it that when you watch it, you want to cry, or you want to kill yourself, or you want to say, God damn it. But that's what the movie is going for, and it worked for that way. And also, I guess you could have gone for a little bit better of a villain besides a younger version of Wolverine. Like if they had taken Sabretooth, for example, Liev Schreiber, and turned him into a vicious beast. Okay, I get it. It's a clone, and the whole thing is built around Wolverine's DNA and clone. I mean, it works into X-23 as well. I get that. It's fine the way it is, but the little nitpicks is the only thing I have to explain for why it's not higher. 13, Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy. It's one of those movies that I had never heard of these characters before this was announced. Then when I looked into it and saw that they were just a group of random weird characters that didn't even last that long in the comics, and Marvel was actually going for this, I was like, man, is this gonna work? A talking raccoon, a talking tree, these aliens, the cosmic version of Marvel. And not only did it work, but it worked tenfold. It was so funny. It was so fun. It looked gorgeous. James Gunn knew how to present these characters in a way that made them lovable, that made them relatable, even though a lot of them aren't human. Chris Pratt is so funny and so good as well. The music is so great. 12, Deadpool. Deadpool, man. Talk about a kick in the ass to the superhero genre. And not just that, look how long it took for Deadpool to even become a movie. Ryan Reynolds, for like 10 years, was trying to make this happen. And he even went through X-Men Origins and had to endure what they did to the character just to finally get this movie made. It almost wasn't going to happen, but somehow that footage got leaked. And thank God it did, because not only did this movie make a bunch of money, but it earned it. It was rated R, but it was fun and it was hilarious. It went to that humor that Ryan Reynolds is good for, the type of humor that I enjoy watching. And also, it did a good job just telling the story, Deadpool's origin and the cancer and everything that happened there, the experiments and the procedure. And then his relationship with Vanessa is so great to watch. The chemistry is amazing. You find yourself going, wow, I was just expecting dick jokes for 2 hours, but now I'm actually feeling something, feeling emotions here. And you have Colossus, you have Negasonic Teenage Warhead, a character that I didn't know until this movie, and now she has like the coolest name ever. I'll never forget this character's name. 11, X-Men Days of Future Past. I really wanted to have this in top 10. And if this was like a couple years ago, this would have been in top 10. This is one of the best X-Men movies ever. The fact that they brought the original cast back and you saw everybody that you loved and everybody like where they were at in this apocalyptic future and how everything was to crap and these sentinels and them wiping mutants out, and it looks so bleak and looks so terrible. Then you saw Wolverine go back in the past, and seeing him interact with the first class cast was different and cool and just had the right amount of energy, going back and forth with the old cast. And the scene with James McAvoy talking to Patrick Stewart is still one of the moments I remember the most. Jennifer Lawrence, this is her best performance as Mystique. Michael Fassbender, them breaking him out of the Pentagon, and the moment with Quicksilver, so memorable. I can't believe how memorable Quicksilver is from one scene. It's such a smart way to undo X-Men 3. Man, did they need to do that. I'm one of those haters of X-Men 3 for sure. Number 10, the original Spider-Man. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. I just love this movie. I do. I love an origin story that's done well. And Peter Parker's origin story has never been done well or better than that first one, where you meet Tobey Maguire and you instantly get this character that he is a little nerdy. He is a dork in some ways, but still relatable because he likes the girl across the street, Mary Jane. He wants her to notice him. He wants to be that nice guy. It just doesn't have the greatest luck, and you appreciate that when he gets bit by the spider and everything happens to him, but he loves it. He's embracing these powers. He's jumping on the rooftops. He's so excited and he loves it. And then the scene with Uncle Ben is so tragic and so sad to watch, and the promise he makes about great power, great responsibility. People still quote that, even though Spider-Man's been rebooted so many times. People still remember that line. It's so important. And William Dafoe as Green Goblin, perfect casting. I know it's not the greatest thing, that mask, and you wish you just use William Dafoe, put green skin over him. They did have a different looking mask that they didn't like, but I think looked great. Even with that though, I still think William Dafoe's creepy laugh, you could see his eyes through the yellow eyes, like he still is able to break through that barrier. The scene of him talking to himself in the mirror, but it's a different personality. Number 9, Batman 89. This is the movie. This is the movie that got me into the Batman character. This is the movie that got me to know Batman and his origin, his backstory with his parents and them being killed, and what that did to him. Michael Keaton shows that pain that he carries with him constantly. He's so brooding. He looks great as the Batman in the costume. I'm one of the few people who like Vicky Vale, Kim Basinger. People complain about her screaming and yelling and yada yada, and they don't buy her, but I like her. I don't like that Alfred lets her into the Batcave, but I like their relationship. And Jack Nicholson, Jack Napier, the Joker. I've said it before, I never want to see like an origin of the Joker. And you think about it, that first movie shows. It does, but I don't want to see the origin of the Joker. But for some reason, this works. Dropped into the vat of chemicals, turned insane and mad, and it's Jack Nicholson just turned up so many volumes. He's having so much fun, just being goofy. That first shot of him coming out of the shadow with that Danny Elfman score, I can't tell you how many moments I'm like, that score is giving me the chills. Number 8, X-Men 2, X-Men United. This is still, I think, the best X-Men movie. I mean, I know you could debate Days of Future Past, and that's fine, but I just like how this movie, again, it's in that same vein that Bryan Singer created, whether you like it or not. Nightcrawler's introduction, his scene at the White House is amazing to watch. That's how you start a sequel. That's how you start a movie, and the effect still looks great. I think Patrick Stewart, though, the scene of them in the plastic jail cell playing chess, love that. William Stryker as a villain is so interesting because he has a point of view. He has a reason for why he's doing it, and when you find out, you go, okay, that makes sense. But then when you see how connected he is to Wolverine's backstory, like, I never needed a Wolverine origin movie, because this is Wolverine's origin here. Those flashes to the experiment, those flashes to him covered in blood with the knives, and he's screaming in pain, and it's like, that's all I needed to see, because it looked horrific, it looked sad, it looked scary. Wolverine not only fighting off the soldiers at the school and just kicking ass, but the scene of him fighting Lady Deathstrike is still something I'll never forget. Number 7, Iron Man. The first Iron Man. Not only did this kickstart the MCU, which is something that we didn't even think about at the time, but it's just a great movie on its own. Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., even though he had been acting for 20 years prior and he had his issues, personal issues, he brought all of that to this character. And he does have fun. He is so charismatic. He does have this huge personality where you see him get taken in Afghanistan or Iraq, and he's being terrorized and being forced to make a weapon, but he makes his own suit, gets out of there. Such a good origin. That's what makes him want to stop what his company's doing, to sell weapons, and he wants to save people. I love the scene where he goes back there in the Iron Man suit and fights a bunch of terrorists. I like Jeff Bridges as the villain. I think he's a very strong villain. His connection to Tony's father and Tony and him turning on him. Gwyneth Paltrow as the pseudo love interest. I mean, she's the assistant and they have moments of being into each other, but it's not in your face. 6, Spider-Man 2. This, to me, is the greatest Spider-Man movie of all time. I love this movie. I have watched this movie so many times. This movie gets me to that place of understanding Peter Parker, relating to him, how at the beginning nothing seems to go right. He has 3 jobs and he gets fired from the pizza job. He's barely making it with J. Jonah Jameson, who I have to acknowledge J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Amazing. Every scene with him, everything he says, gold. And then he's in school, and he's because he's being Spider-Man, because he's putting that first, everything else is suffering. He chose not to be with Mary Jane. Even she's getting fed up, and she's going to move on with her life, and it's killing him. His friendship with Harry Osborn is going down the tube because Osborn is obsessed with Spider-Man. Just everything is going wrong, and that's how the character should be. Like, I care as much about his relationships and his plots as Peter Parker as I do when he's Spider-Man. Like Dr. Octopus, who's so much more interesting than I've ever seen him in the cartoons or comics, where his wife is murdered. He's trying to create this experiment to bring sun energy to the world, but backfires, and it gives him these mechanical arms that kind of control him, and it's weird. And the special effects of him climbing up on the walls of buildings still to this day look great. Obviously, the train sequence is something that everybody still talks about, and it's Spider-Man saving people, getting thrown out of the train, him trying to stop the train from going off the rails, being unmasked, and the citizens being there for him. I don't think it's cheesy. I like it. I like to think that there are good people in the world. Like, I love when the moment where Harry Osborn finds out that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and that shocking moment in their interaction. But then, same movie, Mary Jane finds out, and I get so invested in those characters, and those actors, I think, pull off those scenes well. Her leaving the wedding in her gown to go and see Peter, and the last shot, I always talk about this, that last shot of her looking out into the window of Spider-Man going out there and her being like, that's my guy, I love him, but this is going to be hard. He's going to kill himself. So this movie, it's still my favorite Spider-Man movie. It's still everything that I want from a Spider-Man movie. Number 5, Batman Begins. This is like the best origin movie I think ever. Like, I couldn't have asked for a better Batman origin movie. It's something that I never thought was possible. After Batman and Robin, I almost gave up on thinking, yeah, they're not gonna make another Batman movie, probably. I'll stick with the animated stuff, and fine. And this movie sort of came out of nowhere. And I watched it and I was just like, holy crap, like the tone of this is so serious. Bruce Wayne's actual origin, and seeing him being trained by the League of Shadows, and seeing him choosing, though, not to kill. These movies really explore and deal with why Bruce Wayne doesn't kill because of the death of his parents, and just watching all of those breakdown moments of his life. I really got behind it. I really connected to the character more so than I've ever had before, even though I already loved the character, and seeing how he becomes Batman, seeing him come back to Gotham in his first time in the costume. I thought the costume looked great. I love his Batman voice. The scene where he takes Flash and hangs him upside down in the rain, like, I'll always remember that intensity. Gary Oldman was the Gordon that I've always wanted. Let's be honest, we never really got that with the Pat Hingle Gordon. Katie Holmes, people crap on Katie Holmes. I'm not saying she's the greatest actress in the world, and I'm not saying that anyone else couldn't have been better, but I liked her. I thought she was fine. Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox, also just him getting the gadgets and how all of that worked. Michael Caine as Alfred, being his rock and being there to even challenge him in certain situations where he's saying you're going too far, or this is a thrill for you. And Liam Neeson as the real Ra's al Ghul. I always love that reveal. I always love that moment where he reveals himself at that party, and him trying to burn down the house. He does burn down the house. Him trying to gas Gotham. He does gas Gotham, and he turns everyone's fear on them. Scarecrow's scenes, Cillian Murphy, like, you almost want more of him because he's so good, he's so twisted, he's so sick. For the Avengers, I still remember The first midnight screening when I saw this movie, the atmosphere was electric. This was such a build-up of so many films, and it's the perfect way to do it. We have standalone movies for every character, so we get to know them before the big team-up movie. Imagine that, because it does work. And I'll always remember that atmosphere, that energy, the crowd loving it, the people laughing and clapping at all the right moments, just all the fun I had. I saw this movie like, what, 4 times in the theater, just over and over again. Loki and him bringing this alien army to Earth, that battle in New York at the end is something that I'll always remember, because you felt like this was real, like this was really happening. All of the civilians, them saving these people, and them working with cops, and Captain America, I think Chris Evans is great as this character, seeing him earn that spot as the leader of the team and everyone else respecting him. And Hulk kicked ass. It's overwhelming to think about. I couldn't imagine how Joss Whedon pulled this off, how he made it work, how he made it fun, how he gave us the serious moments when we needed it, but he made us have fun with it. 3, Captain America Civil War. This is so close, though. This was so close at being number 2 because of how great it is, because of how it's the perfect melding of. It has moments that feel like an Avengers movie, where Scarlet Witch does that mistake and the explosion that happens, but still, that's an Avengers movie, all of them doing what they do. And then even the airport fight, that feels like an Avengers movie, because it has that weight of seeing heroes fight each other. And sure, it's sad in that way, but then you have fun with it. You have Spider-Man show up. I can't tell you how amazing it was to see Spider-Man with Marvel, like with the characters that I've always wanted to see him in. I had given up the idea of that happening, but we got to see it here. And Black Panther, you also introduce a character. When you talk about everything that's in this movie, you talk about Bucky and whether or not he's evil as well, but then Cap is sticking by his side. There's so much in this movie that in the wrong hands, it would have been overloaded. It would have felt like too much. You would have felt like you didn't get enough of certain people, but you did. You got as much as you needed with everyone. Number 2, this just barely inched out Civil War for me. Captain America Winter Soldier, another Captain America movie. 2 Captain America movies in the top 3. That's pretty amazing. This film, it had that tone, that political thriller that they call it, where not only do you get Robert Redford as a villain, the twist that he's a villain, finding out that S.H.I.E.L.D., half of S.H.I.E.L.D. was Hydra, was a huge shock to me. Nick Fury, his fake out death, but the scene of him being chased down by cops, I think is great. Bucky and his reintroduction as the Winter Soldier, Terminator-like he comes off, assassin-like he comes off. Black Widow plays an important part to this as well, because she's working with Cap. Cap trusts her, but she's almost off doing her own thing for Nick Fury. Falcon, I think Anthony Mackie is great as this character, and I instantly love their relationship, from them running around Washington, that joke, to just them being friends. But my number one all-time favorite movie, and honestly, I'd be surprised if it's not everybody's all-time favorite movie, superhero movie, The Dark Knight. I've talked about The Dark Knight so many times. I can talk about it more if you want, but it goes without saying. Not only is Christian Bale great as Batman, and I don't think enough people talk about him because of other great things in the movie, but Christian Bale brings it. Aaron Eckhart brings a lot to this Harvey Dent role, because he's being introduced, he's being presented as Gotham's white knight and savior, and you buy it. You buy that he wants to clean up the city. He's dating Rachel Dawes, this time Maggie Gyllenhaal, who I do think is better as the character. And yeah, it's a love triangle, but it's not annoying. It's not your annoying version of the love triangle. She was important to Bruce Wayne, but she's also trying to move on because she knows he's Batman. So it makes sense for why these characters are in the situations that they're in. And the fact that Batman wants to give up being Batman, people don't like that either. Look, if you're doing a realistic take on Batman, how long do you expect Bruce Wayne to be able to do this? That one scene of his back being all bruised up, like, he can't do this forever. It's Heath Ledger as the Joker that I do admit brings this movie to another level. Not only watching Heath Ledger's performance, just the total disconnect of not even recognizing this guy anymore. His face, his eyes, the mannerisms that he picked up, the changing of his voice, the laughing, the the jokes that he tells and how he gets off on just killing people and causing mayhem and destruction. And every time he's on TV and he's threatening to kill someone or threatening to blow up a hospital or threatening to do this and that and sending everyone into mass hysteria, that it seems like he's just doing things and being crazy, but you find out he actually does plan a lot of things out. He does know people's emotions and where people are going to go before they do it. Besides Batman, and this is why I love seeing how he just can't figure Batman out. He can't predict Batman's moves because Batman won't kill him. And that dynamic, Batman not killing him and Joker being fascinated by that and saying, we're destined to do this forever. It's so great. It's such a great illustration of why these two characters work against each other, why these two characters are fascinated with each other. Every time I stop to watch this movie, I get sucked back in. I remember seeing this like 5-6 times in the theater. I remember being obsessed with it until it came out on Blu-ray. I remember watching this as often as I could. I would make sure I watch it at least once a year, if not more. This movie is not only my favorite superhero movie, but it's my favorite movie of all time. So guys, let me know in the comments below what you think of the rest of my top 50 superhero movies list. Do you like my top 10 or my higher ups? Do you think some movies should be in other spots? What's your favorite superhero movie ever? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later!